Look, if you look at the electoral map, a lot of these swing states are going to be close. New Hampshire is going to be very close. But if Kamala Harris were to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, the path to victory for Trump is North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, New Hampshire, right? So when you got to do the electoral math on this, and yeah, we might only have 4 electoral votes, but there's no doubt it's going to come into play. And this is a state that Trump only lost by 2,000 votes. 2,000 votes, that's nothing, back in 2016. And I think a lot of us agree that 2024 is going to look a lot more like 2016 in terms of the race. So I have no doubt that they will be putting resources here. Obviously, the former vice president thinks she needs to spend, the current vice president, Kamala Harris, needs to think that she needs to spend time here to earn and still have a chance to win this state. She's coming today. And I think you're going to see Trump coming and spending money here as well.
Hey, Governor, it's good to see you. This is the kind of stuff we live for. We just talked to a Harris surrogate, a Democratic member of the House of Representatives from New England, and it's a great opportunity to ask you, as Kaylee said, some of the same questions to get a sense of where your head is. We associate you with traditional, dare I say, old-fashioned Republican conservative values, and I wonder what your thought is when it comes to some of the deficit spending that we're hearing about from both campaigns. The analysis from Goldman Sachs makes it pretty clear that the deficit spending that Bloomberg estimates would top $10 trillion over a decade to making permanent the Trump tax cuts would outweigh any other benefits of his tax proposal. Kamala Harris, I believe, is in the area of $2 trillion in deficit spending, with at least the amount that we have heard. And I know that you're not about to vote for the Harris campaign. Are you concerned about ballooning deficits as a conservative sitting in New Hampshire under a Trump 2.0?
I'm concerned about a blooming deficits in America, regardless of who's in. There's no question about that. I mean, let's be honest. Republicans in the House and the Senate have not held up the conservative fiscal values that the Ronald Reagans and the Chris Sununus really champion. So it's not just about Trump. It's about Congress. It's about actually leadership on the Republican side in the Senate and in the House saying, hey, here's a proposal for a balanced budget. Here's how you do it. Here's the tough decisions to get it done. Now, under the potential Harris administration, as with Biden, it's been just an economic disaster on the macro scale. But more importantly, it's been a disaster on the microeconomic scale, being the rent, the cost of living, the fact people can't afford their electricity bills. They panic about how they're going to put food on the table. I mean, those are real issues. Inflation isn't 3.9%. That's not how people look at it. Inflation is more like 25 to 35% compounded since the last administration. And that's what people are going to look at. I could afford things 4 years ago. I can't afford them now. They're going to go to the ballot box and they're going to vote on those issues of that financial stress, that anxiety, if you will, that stuff that keeps them up at night. That's what drives a voter. And that 10 to 12% of swing voters that are still out there, that's far and away the number one issue. Not so much on the macroeconomic scale. I get nervous about that. But day to day, family to family, it's all about how we're going to pay our bills and who's the agent of change. Clearly not the current administration, right? You're just going to get the same, if not worse, in terms of economic policies, price controls and all that nonsense. But the agent of change to actually make people's lives more affordable. And that's going to be Donald Trump.
Well, Governor, is that really true, though, if he's talking about blanket tariffs on everything that the U.S. brings in, perhaps 60% on goods from China, the world's second largest economy? Any economist would tell you that is inflationary policy. If this is really about the cost of goods, that doesn't mean they're going lower under Trump.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I don't love the tariff policies that he's putting forward, but again, that's strategy, right? That's kind of the leverage you want to use from America's position as the world leader and as the economic leader in the world to force better decisions and better results out of China and ultimately even Europe and the rest of Asia. So again, the Biden administration has ignored it, right? They haven't done anything on any of these issues. They're letting China grow more powerful. To understand what's going on in these international economies and to kind of threaten those tariffs, to threaten some sanctions and things of that nature, to gear up better international negotiations on what, ultimately what, not just the tariffs, but what other regulatory barriers should be there so they're not stealing our IP and all of that. I'll say this, none of that's going to matter when it comes to the vote. It's really not. When it comes to whether people vote for Trump or Harris, that's kind of a 30,000-foot level issue. People are going to vote on their anxieties. It's the border, but not about the 11 million illegals coming in. That's bad enough. I mean, we can't stand that. But it's the drugs they're bringing in. It's the human trafficking issue. You're right, to take those macro issues and have a candidate, and that's what you're going to hopefully see in the debate, these candidates bring it down to a real level of what parents are struggling about and what parents are driving their anxieties on, if you will, on cost of living and drugs, how it affects their families. That's what's going to really be the selling point that I think Trump has to get by and kind of sell to the people, if you will, because I do think that Republicans have the right answers. They have real results. It's not just, hey, I'm not Joe Biden. I mean, that's literally all the Kamala Harris campaign has right now. That's not enough to cross the finish line in these swing states come November 5th.
Well, she's proposing some small business tax incentives in your state today, Governor, which is why she's gone there. But the analysis that we got from Alec Phillips at Goldman Sachs does leave us scratching our heads a bit. He estimates if Donald Trump wins, the hit to growth from the tariffs we're discussing right now, assuming they're 20 percentage points across the board, and tighter immigration policy would outweigh the positive fiscal impulse and result in something in the area of a 0.5 percentage point of GDP. If the experts on Wall Street are telling us that deficit spending will increase inflation and that this Trump plan will slow economic growth, how does that help anybody with their anxiety about high prices?
Because Kamala Harris is proposing price controls, which would absolutely crush the economy, which would absolutely crush any sense of entrepreneurship, would absolutely crush the stock market, reduce any sense and then you add on that we're going to tax you on unrealized gains, right? That crushes the stock market, right? That basically says anyone who's making major investments to companies that ultimately grow and employ people, that all comes to a screeching halt. Kamala Harris's policies, she had an opportunity to actually go to the middle, but she went even more extreme than Joe Biden. So Joe Biden has, in his administration, has completely destroyed this economy and people's ability to afford anything. She goes even further left than that government is going to now control prices and destroy any sense of entrepreneurship or innovation in any of these new markets, allowing just basically a couple giant companies to control things. And it actually ends up in causing a massive reverberation in a negative way throughout this entire economy. So, I mean, the scary point that you're not bringing up and that article doesn't address is the fact that the Democrats and these they're not even Democrat policies, they're extreme liberal policies, would be devastating to the average American in terms of what they can afford.
Governor, I'd like to ask you about a well-read piece today, and it's Jonathan Martin's new column in Politico magazine. The headline reads as follows: if Republicans want to win, they need Trump to lose big. It's this notion that members of your party, at least off the record, are suggesting it actually would be net beneficial in the medium term, shall we say, for Donald Trump to lose this election. What do you think about that idea? Would it be better for the party?
No, of course not. Look, so with all due respect, of course, anytime you have a president in office, the opposite party has an opportunity in the midterm elections. That's been tried and true for 100 years. Doesn't mean it's an automatic win for them, but that typically is just how it works. So with all due respect to Jonathan, I love the guy, but he's not saying anything that is really news. And other than the fact that if he says that party insiders, look, I hate to tell you, I'm a governor. I'm a pretty popular governor, and I'm kind of on the inside. And I talk to other governors, I talk to other politicians all the time. Nobody's talking about that. No, not at all. Because what matters? What's going to get America in a better place down the road? Results matter. And the Trump administration, as an administration, can start delivering real results, bringing cost of living down, trying to deal with the drug crisis, the border crisis. And if you get those results, that's a huge win for Republicans that want to run in 2026 or even 2028. So, no, I disagree with the premise completely. I do believe results matter. And I can honestly tell you, no one's talking about that on the inside of the political bubble, so to say. Everybody is kind of galvanizing around making sure we get a Republican ticket. And look, whether you like Trump or not, what you get with Trump is a Republican administration. A new Republican head of the EPA. The current head of the EPA is an absolute disaster. A new Republican head of DOT. A new Republican head of education. All these departments that make rules and a lot of the processes that all of us have to live by. So that Republican administration is going to be a huge win for America. Even if you don't like the way Trump, acts and what he says, I don't like any of that. But boy, that change in holistic style out of D.C. Is going to be hugely beneficial for this country.